Let's talk about WordPress speed optimization plugins. Now, there's a lot of stuff out on the internet about plugins you can use to speed things up. Now, there's a lot of misinformation and people go installing a bunch of random plugins that ultimately slow their site down. So we do a lot of speed work. So we've worked with we have a speed service called WP Speedfix. And we've worked with nearly 2,000 websites now optimizing their speed. So we know a lot about what works and what doesn't. So let me run you through 6 plugins that are must-haves for WordPress speed and one you should never use. So let's get to it. So you must use a caching plugin with WordPress. You can't get away without it. So what caching does is it pre-builds the pages on the site. It does all the work, the database lookups and everything else. So the page is ready before the visitor comes to the website. So they're served up HTML that is ready to go. So it saves a lot of load time effectively. So the pages are pre-built, all the processing is done, and the page is just sent to the user. So there's 2 caching, well, there's a lot of caching plugins out there, but there's 2 we use, and really it depends which one to use. Really depends on how tech savvy you are. So the first one is W3 Total Cache, which is the fastest caching plugin. We've tested a lot of plugins, so it is definitely the fastest out there. But it is very technical. It's also free, which is great, but it is very technical to set up. And if you get a setting wrong, then you will likely break things or slow things down considerably. So unless you're very tech savvy, I probably wouldn't use W3 Total Cache. I'd recommend an alternate plugin called WP Rocket. So WP Rocket is much more DIY friendly. So if you're doing it yourself, that's the one to use because it's a lot easier and you're much less likely to break things or slow things down. So there's a couple of links there to check those out in the article. The next one is Auto-Optimize or Auto-Optimize. It's, I don't know how it's pronounced, but one of those 2 ways. So what we use Auto-Optimize for is CSS and JavaScript compression. So we use them to come out. So, when depending on your theme, there might be a lot of CSS and JavaScript files and the number of plugins using. So what we use that to do is to combine and compress JavaScript and CSS files. So you need to be wary with using CSS combining, JavaScript combining, because it can break things. It can break the design. It can break the functionality of the website. So CSS combining is much less likely to break things. So I do that first. So Auto-Optimize is free. Other plugins do have CSS and JavaScript combining and compression in them as well, but we find Auto-Optimize is probably the best plugin on the market for this. So what we normally do is first test with CSS combining and make sure all the pages on the site load after turning that on, and then look at the JavaScript combining and optimization. So with that, you need to test all pages on the website, and particularly if you have a shopping cart or any kind of active elements on the site, the JavaScript optimization, there is a good chance that it will break something. So be wary of that. So I would check those things, turn them on one by one, and then check the website and make sure that it is functioning okay after you set up that plugin. The next one would be image compression. So our favorite, there's a bunch of image compression plugins out there, and they're all roughly the same. So our favorite is WP Smush It. There is a free version and there's a paid version. We use the paid version because it allows us to bulk compress all the images really easily. So we just open up a page, hit the button, and it will sit there, processing images. Whereas some of the other plugins are really hard to go in and compress all the images at once. You might have to, go through pages and pages and select images, or they're just not as reliable. So they'll roughly work the same in terms of image compression. So, it doesn't really matter which image compression plugin you use. They're all roughly the same. We just like that because of the functionality. If you have a very image-heavy website, it would be worth looking at the paid version of Cloudflare.com, the $20 a month version, or Cloudinary, which is another cloud service that deals with cloud-based image compression. Now, cloud-based image compression is a level above what a plugin can do because it can serve up different file formats depending on what device the visitor is using and what browser. It'll also automatically resize images depending on their device type. So obviously a mobile device is a smaller screen, so it can deal with smaller images. So those cloud services dynamically resize the image based on the device the user's using. So if you have a lot of traffic and you have a lot of images, it would be worth looking at one of those services and paying for it. Okay, so The next, we've got a few plugins here. So there's a whole bunch of WordPress features that don't necessarily do anything for most sites or get used. So there's a plugin we use to turn them off called Perf Matters. It's kind of a funny name, Performance Matters or Perf Matters. So using that plugin, we can turn off a lot of features that are built into WordPress that we just don't use at all. So most of those features, there is a JavaScript file associated with each one of those. So by turning off the features, we turn off the JavaScript files, so there's less to load, so the site loads faster. So I checked that out. So Perf Matters will definitely slim down the site, so there'll be a lot less loading. So that is a paid plugin, but I think it's really cheap. It's like $20 or something like that. There are some free alternatives. So there is a free alternative that turns off the WordPress heartbeat. So heartbeat control is a plugin, and then there's another one called WP Disable. So those would be the alternate free options. So that's kind of the WordPress features, things like emojis. If you're not using emojis, then you can turn off the emoji JavaScript file. And then some themes have things like Google Maps code embedded. So if you're not using Google Maps embeds, so that turns off more JavaScript. So there's a lot that can be done there. And then there's a plugin called WP Optimize, which is a database optimization tool. So if you have an old site or a big site, then your database will probably be bigger and might have some gunk in it that can just be cleaned out, and it will make the database file smaller and the database perform better. So WP Optimize is a database optimization tool. Just clean out some of that nonsense. So it's pretty straightforward to run. You go in and it tells you some of the options there. It will do simple things like it will show you the number of draft posts and revisions and comments, and it'll allow you to delete spam comments and things like that. And then it can run database optimization. So I definitely back up your site before playing with that, because it does do things to the database. And if you hit the wrong button, then you could have problems. So WP Optimize. And then the sixth one would be a content delivery network, which is not strictly a plugin. But I would add this to the list of things you should be using with your WordPress site if you care about speed. Now, there's two content delivery networks we use. So one is Cloudflare. So the free version of Cloudflare for most sites is probably all they need. So we like Cloudflare for small websites because they have more than 100 data centers worldwide. And the base plan's free, which, that's a great price. Like I said before, if you have a lot of images and a lot of traffic, the paid version of Cloudflare does some really intelligent things with image compression optimization, so that's worth checking out. If you can't use Cloudflare for some reason, there are a variety of reasons why you might not be able to use it. One is if you have IT constraints, you might not be able to use it. So in those cases, we'd use Max CDN. Doesn't have as many data centers, but it's probably the next best performing content delivery network. So we'll have links to those in the articles. Now, one plugin you shouldn't use, AMP plugin. So AMP, Accelerated Mobile Pages. So you'll see in a lot of posts around the web talking about speed, they say you should set up the AMP version of your website. Now, we disagree. And the main reason being is that AMP turns off a lot of the things that relate to conversion. So it turns off a lot of the things that get the visitor to do what you want them to do on the website. So that might be opt-in, call you, email you, check out and buy products. So we take a commercial first approach when we're dealing with speed, or a marketing first approach. So we never want to sacrifice our overall goal, which is to sell more stuff or market the business, or basically it's a sale. The website is a sales and marketing tool. So we never want to sacrifice the performance of our sales and marketing for a marginal increase in speed. The whole point of getting a faster website is so that we can market better and sell more. So what we've found with most websites, not all, but most, is that accelerated mobile pages hurt conversion very badly. So AMP pages are effectively slimmed down pages of the website hosted on Google servers. Now, they're actually not that fast. So because the pages are slimmed down and they're hosted on Google servers, they'll load quite fast in about a second. But what we found is if your website isn't a fast host anyway, it will load faster than an AMP page, and you don't sacrifice conversion. So I'd never really chase, or we'd never recommend using AMP. It's just bad for conversion. It's bad for your business. And there are better ways to get the website to load fast. So if you find that if you are playing around with AMP and you find it's faster than your website would normally be, then you probably need to look at better hosting or some of the technical aspects around your hosting. So that'd be our recommendation there. Now, if you are stuck with site speed and you need some help, we do have a service called WP Speed Fix. We have a couple of options there. One where we can fix look at your speed optimization on the host you are on right now, and we also have an option where we move your hosting for you. So there's 2 options there to check out. So that's wpspeedfix.com. Would love to hear feedback on this article. If you have any questions or get stuck or need some advice on anything, just post in the comments and we'll come right back to you.